There's plenty of devices considered gaming phones throughout the years, from the Nokia N-Gage, also known as the Taco phone, and the Xperia Play with a whole PlayStation controller built in. But those phones were of an older time, right? When Android hadn't quite matured to support all of the more impressive titles, and these phones, they just can't really be used nowadays anymore. If we skip a little forward in time to 2017 though, we see a gaming phone revival. Finally, with powerful enough specs and a new generation of games with almost console level graphics finally landing on Android. Now, leading the charge on this new wave was actually quite an unexpected entry, the Razer phone. Like before this, Razer made laptops, mice, keyboards, so pretty much what we're still doing nowadays, I guess. But they never made a phone before, so it came as quite a surprise when the Razer phone was released. And 8 years later, well, let's find out if this thing can still game. But before that, if you like the show, help the channel grow with a like and a sub. First, I gotta say, even in 2025, the Razer phone looks really classy and modern. It's a squared off, gunmetal enclosure that feels solid in the hand, but much thinner than modern phones. It's kinda sleek, like a Razer blade, pun intended. And of course, you need to show off that Razer logo in the back. I kind of wish it had a green outline to match the Razer theme, but these silver chrome reflections, they have a good balance of that flashiness, but also subtlety. If this design looks a bit familiar, that's because it evolved from the earlier Robin by Nextbit, which Razer acquired to get the expertise needed to make their phone. But you still see that Nextbit DNA in here, from the squareness of it all, the circle volume buttons, the placement of the selfie camera and the sensor array, and who could forget the dual front-firing speakers, which Razer further enhanced with the inclusion of Dolby Atmos. I'm not kidding when I say these speakers, man, they can still outpace modern smartphone speaker systems in a head-to-head. In everything from like the clarity, the deepness of the bass, the stereo separation between the two speakers, and just the sheer volume that it can output. Here's a speaker test between the Razer phone and the Xperia 1 Mark IV, also rocking a pretty good stereo speaker system. And don't get me wrong, the Xperia here is by no means rocking a bad speaker. Like, it's pretty good too. But the Razer phone it just does it better. I can make the Razer go even louder actually, but I don't want to get a noise complaint from my neighbor. The screen was also quite future-proof at the time of its release. It's rocking a 120Hz 2K IPS LCD panel, no slouch in 2025, and it was almost unheard of back in 2017. The screen, it isn't perfect, with some dotted patterns that can be seen when you shine a light on it or it hits a different light angle. The brightness in outdoors, it's really not great, you can't see much. And the colors and contrasts weren't the best. But for those who used it at the time, it was probably their first high refresh rate experience on a smartphone. And boy, what a magical feeling that would have been. The thick side bezels gave you plenty of space to grip the phone, combining with those speakers to give you not only an immersive game experience, but it also made the phone a multimedia powerhouse. And I still use it to enjoy content where I know there's gonna be good music or a soundtrack for the Razer phone to sort of flex those audio muscles. Powering all of this was also the top-of-the-line chip for 2017, the Snapdragon 835. Combined with a clean software experience by Razer, it allows this phone to actually run quite smoothly till this day. There's the occasional hiccups if you're constantly switching back and forth, but otherwise it is still quite usable. To keep the Razer phone going, you have a 4000 milliamp cell inside. I know, you're not impressed with that number, right? But you have to remember, 8 years ago, most phones were still rocking 3000 milliamp batteries. However, by this point, the battery on the Razer phone is actually pretty weak. There's a lot of standby drain. I can get about 4.5 hours of battery with moderate use, quite a lot less if you're playing games, and a little bit more if you're watching content. Okay, are there any special gamer enhancements to the Razer phone? Actually, the real gaming stuff, it was quite subtle and practical. No blingy logos, flashy animations, just a simple app called Game Booster. This lets you tweak the display res, the CPU clock speed, frame rate, and this anti-aliasing option that I really don't see any difference when toggling. If you're not a tweaker, there's a few one-click presets for you to just get started real quick. And yeah, that's as far as the gaming features go, actually. The rest of the software is just a very clean, stock Android environment. And Razer even did the classy thing and bundled in the popular Nova launcher, so you get a no-frills experience. Though for my use, I actually still load a Smart Launcher 6 on here. The notification shade has Razer colors, and theirs is a theme store that sadly is now broken. But aside from that, this is as stock as Android gets. And Razer actually even shortened some of the animations to make the phone feel snappier. I guess that when they made this phone, the train of thought basically goes, there's no need for extra stuff like touch triggers, fancy animations, just make the software as clean and light as possible so all of that performance can go into the games. And I gotta say, that strategy has worked out really well. It helps the Razer phone maintain speediness even till this day, even though the software support stopped at Android Pie. Oh, you guys remember when Android used to name their releases after desserts? I really miss that actually. You can also actually unlock the bootloader on the Razer phone, and there's quite a few custom ROMs to revitalize this phone, especially Lineage OS. I haven't personally tried it yet, but hey, if you want to see a little bit more about the rooting, unlocking experience later, maybe I'll make a different video on that. Tell me in the comments if that's something that interests you. Okay, let's get to the part that you've been waiting for. Can you still game on the Razer phone in 2025? Well, let's first take a look at the benchmarks. Antutu returns a score of around 350k in total, with about 100k in the GPU section. This score, I think it'll probably do alright for light games. The only test the Razer phone can run in 3D Mark is actually Slingshot, and it scored a modest but respectable 3700. Despite these optimistic scores, I just could not, for the life of me, get the games to hit 120 FPS on the Razer phone. They are either locked at 60 FPS, or they just did not get high frame rates due to the lower performance. Anyways, light titles like Alto's Adventure have no problem running smoothly. It's a popular title that many reviewers back in the 2010s loved to showcase on their smartphone reviews. Going to some more esporty titles, Call of Duty Mobile multiplayer maps run fine at 60 FPS, though in the lowest settings. But hey, it works. Asphalt 9 runs really well, with high settings somehow maintaining a smooth 60 FPS. Aether Gazer actually let you run at 120 Hz on the Razer phone. In the menus at least, because jump into combat and the old chip can barely manage 50 FPS. Still pretty playable, but you can see the age of the phone really taking its toll. One of the things that the Razer phone has, I think, passed on to later gaming phones is the average cameras. It's a small, low-profile camera bump, and it sits on the top left of the phone, sporting a dual 12-megapixel setup, one with a standard lens and the other a 2x camera that the industry has thankfully moved on from. In good lighting conditions, the camera app still produces pretty nice photos with decent detail, and the HDR algorithm is actually still quite effective in saving those highlights. You can also install other apps like Open Camera or Camera FV5 to get raw capture and get a little bit more mileage from editing. When the light fades though, well, this camera starts to struggle, having trouble acquiring focus and just taking blurry photos. Still though, it's I guess not half bad for a gaming phone, I'd say. Nah. The camera is not the biggest downside to the Razer phone. It's gonna be the storage. You do get a micro SD card slot, which is awesome. Anyone playing with emulators or custom ROMs will probably really appreciate that, but you only get 64 gigabytes internally. Now, back in 2017, this was standard size, but with games now reaching multiple gigabytes, sometimes you have Genshin Impact that's like 20 plus gigabytes. This really just isn't enough. And another odd omission for a gaming device is the headphone jack. And again, I don't know why this happened. Even like modern gaming phones have to keep the headphone jack. Although Razer did give you an included THX certified dongle if you bought it brand new, so that's at least something. Still though, for a first attempt at making a smartphone, Razer made a pretty solid start. They continued on with the sequel in the form of the Razer Phone 2, updating the processor, making the screen brighter, and replacing the metal back with Gorilla Glass and a Razer Chroma RGB logo in the back. Now that's gaming DNA. Sadly, after this, Razer just quietly cancelled the third Razer phone. And although they still made some handhelds later on, such as the Razer Edge, it doesn't have any call capability, so it's not really a phone. Nowadays, the only things that Razer make that are related to gaming phones are their Kishi controllers, the phone cases, and accessories like gaming finger gloves. Oh boy, it's a far cry from the old days. The Razer phone kickstarted a revival in the gaming phone category. It solidified staples that would carry on in later gaming phone series, like a top-tier processor, big battery, great screen, and the snappy performance. Doubtless, the Asus ROG phones, Xiaomi Black Sharks, and the Red Magic series benefited immensely from the momentum generated by Razer's initial move. And I don't think we would have seen such an expansion in the gaming phone category had it not been for the Razer phone's rise and subsequent fall. Though it is a slim chance, I do hope one day Razer will decide to make a return into the gaming phone industry and add new, interesting chapters into smartphone history.